there, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about Electric State, which is for the What the Hell Is This series. This is a new release from Netflix. It costs over $300 million, and it's a mess. And it's a weird mess because it looks very compromised, and it looks like it's been reshot quite a bit. And it suffers from a lot of things a lot of streaming service films suffer from, which is blandness. It's like, because they don't have to draw people into the film, it's on Netflix. I think there's a certain energy you have, release a film, you have to try and entice people in and get people to come back to see it. That means you have to be really razor sharp and everything, which Netflix films and Amazon films don't have to be. They can be just okay and you get one viewing or two viewings out of it and that's it, it's fine, it's done. And it really affects them. And there's also a thing is, I would suspect the development in Netflix and Amazon goes towards a certain type of programming. The same way that in studios there's a certain type of thing that what convention they'd want in the films that would make the films feel all samey. You can watch certain periods most periods in film history, each studio had its own style of what it wanted from its films, and directors would have to conform to that at a certain budget level. And some directors would be able to rebel against, and some directors would be able to manipulate it around it. But they'd be a house style. And Netflix is a house style. And the trouble with Netflix house style is it's just kind of blah. The best Netflix stuff comes from Asia, which they bring in and they don't have any control over. And it's just like, here you go. The ones where they bring in the big stars and say, come and do this Netflix film, tends to be blah. And this is no different. But the big draw in this film is actually the directors, who are Joe and Anthony Russo, who directed Captain America, Winter Soldier, Civil War, The Avengers, Infinity War, and The Endgame, which were 4 films in a row that from Marvel that were delivered totally. And it was like, well, these guys can do anything they want, and they've proven themselves. And since then, basically filmmaking has changed and they've been on streaming and the results haven't been great. Now they're going back to the cinema for the new Avengers films, which hopefully will bring them back up to life a bit more. But it's not been great when they've been in Netflix. I don't know what it is. It's just that they just haven't really found a mojo really at all. I mean, The Grey Man, which is shot before this one with Ryan Gosling, was better than this one. It had a more direct focus and it had some fun actors doing fun things. But I had the same problem as this one is it's overproduced. They gave them so much money and it was like, well, can we do this thing? Yeah, when you go do it. Rather than saying, do you need to do this thing? You don't really need to do this thing. You can find an invent a way around this thing. So the films become has everything. It has this feeling of the kitchen sink first draft where things have not been refined and said, you don't need this, let's do a clever way around this to actually get you from A to B. And it's also the fact that a lot of time the storytelling is basic because it's like, well, this is what we want to do. And it's like, well, does your story actually do that for you, or do you need to work on it a bit more? No, we're going to start shooting next week. And both films have that same feel of, there was some nice stuff there, and then you're shooting, and there was you couldn't complete it. Now they've done the Extraction films as well, which had the same problem. There was nice bits, but there was also terrible bits, and it was never reshot. And they had all the best technicians doing the stuff for them, so it always looked good and always was shot good. It was always edited well, but it was sometimes it was a case of, well, what are we actually watching? Some of it's not that interesting, and it's and a lot of time, if you keep throwing stuff at the screen that's overproduced and yes, the best of everything is all these sequences are overproduced, blah blah blah. There's no through line you're really following. You're just saying, oh, they're going to have another supposedly cool scene, but so what? Sometimes you need to the build up of quietness for a while, and then when the next big scene comes, you've got the impact of it. But instead it's just impact. And these films just suffer from that. It's just which they didn't have in the Avengers films. The Avengers films had lots of stuff going on, but they always seemed to have a point to where people were going A to B to C to D. And the same with the Captain America films, it always seemed to have a point. They knew why things were happening, where it was happening, what was going on. And the Grey Man was just okay. It was enjoyable, but it was a sense of this film would have been better if they had some limitations. If they had lost half the budget and had to find ways around certain ideas and do it without all of the big special effects and all of the big designer castles and things, they'd probably have found a better story. They'd have found the key to the story rather than thinking we can buy our way out of this by having more and more effects. And they've just into this habit of doing that, and it's like, well, I hope you've got it out of your system now, because it's people are now noticing it's like the films are not that good, that they are being overproduced and have been underwritten. Now, combined with this, there's also the fact in this one, the Grey Man was kind of like, let's do a genre film, and it did feel like they were shooting it to be a genre film for Netflix. The Electric State feels like the film they got was they wanted to do, which was that weird film you get to make when you've been a big success, where there's lots of stuff in it that normally the directors would say, no, we're not doing that, that's too weird. And that's a film where the Russos get to do all that crazy shit. Because the plot is basically, it's an alternative world from our own. In the 90s, there would have been robots built from the 80s onwards. In the 90s, the robots rebelled because they wanted freedom from human beings, because human beings are awful usually. And they were all kind of animatronic things that were basically like Disney creatures and like entertainment creatures who had all developed like intelligence and said, we've been demeaned, what are you doing with us? So there was a war between these robot creatures and humanity, and eventually they lost the war. Humanity was losing, and then they created these new machines that could fight the robots one to one. The machines were forced back into this zone, the electric state, where that's where the robots are, and they've just been left here to die, basically. And human beings have become this creatures that went into VR and basically lived their lives in VR. And so basically the robots are stuck in a desert and the human beings are stuck within technology, and no one can really push forward. Like, humanity is dwindling and everything's coming to the control of a few people. Does that remind you of any world that we live in? So there's lots of ideas here, and you've got this kind of whole thing of what was created to entertain you has become your biggest nightmare. So your entertainment has to be made as safe as possible, and it's something that has to be in complete control and all of this. And into this comes a story of a girl who her family died in a car crash just as during the robot uprising. She was sent into foster home. She's been rebelling, and basically into life comes this little robot that has escaped from somewhere, and it has the identity of her brother who had died, who's saying the brother is not, through these weird codes, saying the brother has not died, and he can take her to him. And so it starts a journey to escape from a foster home, to escape from this world where any robot they see will be shot. She finds out where her foster father has been buying stuff that came from the electric state, which has been sold by Chris Pratt, who's the big star of the film. A lot. Him and Millie Bobby Brown are the stars of the film, but he's a bigger star, to be honest. But he has less to do in the film. She's the lead, and he's the star power, and his part could be developed more. He gives it a lot of energy, but it's not the most dynamic part, for reasons I will go into. So they're getting chased and went to the electric state zone, and find out more about the creatures, find out more about the way the robots have evolved over these last few years, and then it becomes a case of they're getting hunted down by the people the human beings. They find out the brother is actually in the where you'd think he'd be in the first place, which is in this compound of all the villain compound. So the robots have to fight the villains at the end to save the boy and stop the villains and bring the world back to some sort of sanity. Because the robots do not want to fight humans; they just wanted to be free and left alone. So there's lots of stuff going on here, and you hear that outline, you think, yeah, I've seen bits of it before, but it could be done as a good fable, as a fun fable. They're obviously thinking this is their Star Wars. This is their take me to a Star Wars. And there's a lot going for it at the start. I mean, the first hour is actually very enjoyable. Because even though you know certain things have been done before, the robot uprising is done really well. The bond between the girl and her brother is done well. It's done in a Hollywood way, but it's done well. The actors are good. They know what they're doing. The introduction of Chris Pratt's character is fun because he is useless and hopeless, and he's not trying to be vain about it. The world's set up. We have Jason Alexander as a foster parent who's just utterly corrupted by the technology, and this sense of human beings who have been wasted by this technology is terrific. There's lots of ideas here, and they don't slow the story down to focus on anyone. It's just like they assume that you're intelligent enough to see the implications of everything they put in the film. So everything's going well until we get to the point where you're meant to get to the adventure side of the story, which is when you go into the zone. Now, even in the zone, it starts out not bad. You get this thing of these creepers, which are robots who are cannibalizing other robots to survive, and they're dangerous. So they're sort of robot villains, and they're set up well. You find out where the good robots are and go to their place. They defend it, and they're very retro, and it's all very charming. And you get to a lot of their stuff as well, and it's all working pretty well. Nothing amazingly unique, but it's done well. You can tell the directors really want to make this film, and this whole idea of this retro world, an alternative world to our own, this retro world, is really appealing to them, and the whole idea of this detritus of our entertainment system destroying our world and destroying our ability to move on is a good metaphor for human beings and what we are, and this whole idea of like people just hang on to the past. There's lots there, and you're thinking, okay, if they develop this well, you've got something. Instead, the film falls apart, and there's a reason for that. It's called action sequences. It's the need to have action sequences and to have things that are tied up in neat bows. And basically when the plot kicks into find the brother and where he is and have to go and rescue him, that's when the film just falls apart. Because you have action scenes you don't need. It's almost like they made the film and then realised, we don't have many action scenes. Because this film was reshot. I mean, it's been publicly announced it was reshot for about a month of reshoots, and you feel that most of it was action. Most of it was like, you know, there's scenes in here that you don't need. That they're just like, oh, he has to get from A to B to find his next plot point. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a minor action scene that doesn't actually have any stakes before they get to this point. They get there, they find the basic information, and then we're going to have another action scene that has no stakes for about 5-10 minutes, and then find the thing that happens that you need to the next plot point to move on happens. But it's just all running around this carnival and costing a lot of money, doing all these scenes. But there's some fun gags, there's also a lot of meandering action, and it's like you can just feel the life coming out of it. Again, it's to do with cutting back and actually sticking to the point. The first half of the film, anytime there's an action scene, basically it was her escaping from her foster home. It was done very quickly. Then it was her escaping, her finding Chris Pratt and they escaping from the people chasing them, setting up the threat. It was done a bit too long, but it was setting up the idea that the villain was a threat. And it was like, okay, you could have been it's a bit overproduced, but it's okay if that's just the only overproduced bit you have. Little did I know that was going to be the restrained version of this. There's the first scene when they meet the robots. The robots fire fridges at them. which is a fun little sequence. It's well done. It's weird, and the things when you get to see the robots in the robot world, it is very weird. So it's obvious that people panicked. It was like, where's your identification figure? You're identifying these robots who are just strange looking. All these humans who are very eccentric, and it's like, who do you identify with? Because it's just a weird film now. This is just, I think they realised they made a art house film for $200 million at this point. They'd indulged these directors, and the directors had made this weird film, and it was like, if you leave it as it is, certain people will like it, like me, but most people wouldn't. No, we'll add tons of action to hopefully get out of this hole. When it's not an action film, where the whole point is to be much more like Iron Giant, but kind of more eccentric. Instead, it becomes, let's just expand it and make it a big blockbuster for the final third, and let's take away all the fun weirdness to it, because they don't solve the problem of, we don't have really identification figures. You've got the sister looking for her brother, and she's bonding with his little robot to connect there. And that would have worked if there'd been less things around it. But you're adding stuff like an overextended action scene to get from A to B, which takes away from the point you're focused on in the story. And then there's more stuff with the robots when they're into the robot land, which takes away a bit more from that story. So you don't really focus on the story you need to focus on. And then you're going to do this bit where you have to go and find this information in the robot area. And again, tons of action, which takes away from the central story. And also the fact is, they say this thing's vast, and they seem to be able to get anywhere from 5 minutes. Then finally, the robots get attacked by the humans, and they have to come together and fight and say, we're going to attack these people, they're not going to leave us alone. They've reneged on their deal, the humans have reneged on the deal. Now this should be a kind of scary thing of the robots finally have had enough, where they're going to go, what's going to happen. No, they're the good guys, so you don't have any tension in action scenes of what they're going to do. No, they're just going to fight these human bad guys. And these other overextended scenes that take up the last third of the movie, where things happen, there's lots of gags, but there's only about a minute of plot. The minute of plot is she rescues her brother and finds that he can't be rescued, he's too badly damaged. That's the only plot point in the last third of the movie. The rest is lots of action, and they have to destroy the connection to all these robots so they can all power down. Sort of like the robots in the end of Phantom Menace. So, if they fight these robots and then get to the control panel and turn it off, they've won. And so suddenly you've got villains who have an easy Achilles heel, so it's not that, you're not really that bothered. And they're faced as villains against these robots who are weird and who most people probably can't identify with. That's just because they haven't been set up in a way that's, because what if they'd actually just had developed these robots in the middle of the film rather than lots of action scenes? By the time you got to the end, you'd have cared about them. Instead, you get a bit of them, then you have more action, and then you've got more action, and it's like, I don't particularly care. I don't know who these people are. These robots are figures who are a bit eccentric, and you haven't gone beyond that. So you've got all this action, it's empty action, and Chris Pratt has to carry most of it because the girl's after her brother. So he's carrying most of it, he's trying his best, but it's based on a lot of CGI, and it's full of stuff that I like a lot of like old retro robots fighting other more modern robots. Lots of visuals I like, but the story's not there. The story's just hanging there, and it's awkwardly edited as well, between all these subplots that are going on that you don't really care about any of them because they haven't been developed. And the editing definitely feels like there's been reshoots. Like, things are getting placed and squashed into things that don't really deliver. Everything's been overproduced and overdone in a way that just pulls you out of it. Just like The Grey Man, where it's like a simpler solution to a lot of these problems would have got a more emotional impact. Having thrown tons of stuff at the screen does not work. You need to actually have the emotions first. And these films do not do that. It's just like they seem to have assumed that you are more emotionally involved from the first half, and they don't have to develop characters or plots because the plot is basic. It's save this kid. You save this kid. He's the key to all these all these villains, and all these VR things interconnecting. So if you take him out of the loop, they'll all collapse, which is a stupid thing. It's like, it's a retro world, so having him run VR thing is already stretching it, but it's done as a metaphor. But then tying it to an actual plot device of everyone going through the brain of this one child, it's just stupid. And that's the reason why you can't really buy the ending, is like the plot device they've got hanging on is objectively dumb. And it's like, you had to destroy something better than get this rescue this kid. This does not work. It's just your brain just screaming saying, this is stupid, this is dumb, what the hell are you doing, movie. And there's also other things, like everyone's trapped in VR. If you've ever, who uses VR? I mean, I've got a VR thing. I barely use it, and I love VR. VR's limited. It's the technology of putting stuff in your head. Does not connect people. So it's a weird dynamic this film has that's just off. Everything's off. It's like, well, it's like instead of taking ideas, basic ideas, and then really building them to like a much lower budget film that you could actually do character based things on and have tons of ideas with. It's like, no, we have to do this as an adventure movie, but it's not really set up for an adventure movie. It's set up for a kind of walkabout movie. Instead, you have to all this action. It just takes away from ends when you're trying to do as a human being for any of these characters, and you end up having a girl boss thing at the end where she was the important one, not a poor brother who's been tortured the whole movie, and you're like, huh? That's just sad. That's like, the whole point of this character was overcoming doubts about herself and trying to protect her little brother, and she can't do it, so it's such a tragedy. They try and turn it around to be something more important, something more uplifting, when no, it's a tragedy. That's it, it's a tragedy. And it's like, you're trying to add something that doesn't belong there. Because it's much more moving if it's a tragedy. She couldn't save her brother. That's her motivation the whole film. And that makes her human, is she's trying to save her brother, and then suddenly it's like, oh, she was a strong one overall, and it's like, no, she was, and that was the defining thing of her, was humanity, like trying to do a human thing. And it just becomes like, you're going this way as well. And it actually cheapens the character too, and it's like, you didn't need to do this. This is like, this just takes that's again alienates even more. So the whole film was just this weird mess. It seems like it started out as something pure, and they wanted to do this film, and then it was just so weird that they had to compromise to get the budget, and they ended up in this film that was not one of anything. It's just this bland thing. It's so annoying because the creature design is great, the robots are terrific, and everyone's trying, and the whole retro thing is fun, and there's lots of ideas in there that could be developed if they'd done it probably as 2 films and used all that money for 2 films and cut them in action. You'd probably have something really good. Instead, it's this mess. So that's, what the hell is this? You know, it's a shame. I was hoping it would be better than it was, because the idea was fun, but it just doesn't work. I hope that's the end of the Russos trying to spend a fortune to solve problems. But they're doing an Avengers movie now, which suggests they're not. But hopefully they remember to bring back the humanity in these ones, because this thing really was very basic. Okay, that's me for now. I'll see you later. Right, bye.